Hi, thank you for tuning in. My name's Rachel May, and I'm beginning to post some videos on YouTube. As you can see, these are just sound. Later on, we might have actual visual videos, but since it's all readings and spiritual teaching, and I will be looking at the planetary energies and so on as well, spiritual development, then you can just listen. You might like to listen while you're doing something else, as a lot of people do. So this recording is for Riley, and she asked me if I could explore exercises that people who are developing spiritually and as seers and visionaries could do to facilitate would be opening their third eye and working with their third eye. And if there was anything to help them to feel safe. So this is an interesting situation because I was kind of born doing this. I did, develop it, but I developed it in other ways. Nobody ever taught me, and I've never done exercises to develop my psychic ability, or very, very few. Just as a game or a test, I guess there have been certain things. So either the information is going to be channeled from a higher place, and I do work with master guides and my higher self, obviously, or I'm going to, I probably will pull some stuff out of the ethers here. How it happened for me was I had a massive Kundalini awakening at the age of 18 and became instantly very, very psychic. I mean, I was psychic before, but it just kind of opened everything up. And I actually spent about 30 years toning it down because it was overwhelming, the amount of information I was getting. So I kind of went at it the other way than most people do. The big issue that I find that beginning readers and even healers and channelers and so on have is not actually ability. We are born with a lot of psi ability. We're born, like when you're being born, you can hear what everyone in the room is thinking, for example. But most people are shut down by, trauma, basically, so that they don't remember their birth. But if you have ever done any rebirthing and relived your birth, then you know that you can hear what people are thinking, and you know everything about everybody in the room and so on. So you can see where there's a lot of stress on the newborn. So if you're not shut down at birth, which, young children tend to have quite a lot of psychic ability still online, many young children, and all have more than adults realize. The schooling process would normally sort of knock the rest of it out of you. It's not that it's not still working. It's still there, but you've been separated from it by being surrounded by people who don't believe it's real, who've been programmed that it's not real. You will absorb programming. And especially as a child, you will absorb programming from the adults around you. That's how it works. And the system we're in has been devised mainly by people, or taken over by people who are very aware of that, how that process works. So, with the takeover of the hospitals and the schools, and then, what they've done with the working world now, which is, I was a child in the 1950s and the 60s, and so there was still quite a lot of pressure on us to perform and to succeed. But you could take it or leave it. It wasn't like what they're doing now to kids, where there's so much fear inculcated into them about, that they are going to have to work very hard, or they won't even be able to get a job, or have a family, or buy a house. And in many cases it's actually true, because things have shifted. There used to be plenty of work, and people used to get a lot more money for the hours they put in. It's probably now in America at I feel like it's at a quarter of what it was sort of 30 years ago, 40 years ago in terms of what you're getting for the hours you put in, but it could be actually less than that. Most people are having quite a struggle. So, everything is keeping people's nose to the grindstone. And obviously there are lucky people, they may have very good karma to do with money. They may have very good karma to do with loving support. They may have all kinds of things that are not feeling hugely pressured. But the vast majority of people now are feeling very pressured. Still, there are people who feel they have a vocation to do light work. There are a lot of people doing light work, seers, readers, healers, people studying these things, people learning these things, because when the time comes and you feel you've got to do it, you really do have to do it. As I say, everyone has some psychic ability, and many people have a lot. The big issue is actually more in the area of confidence to stick your neck out and do it. There's one very, encouraging fact for people who doubt their ability but feel that they are meant to do things. For example, if you are doing a reading for somebody or trying to get information for somebody that needs it, they do literally pull the information through you. And so actually working directly with a person who needs help, for me it was the fastest way to bring my skills online. And when I teach psychic development classes, I don't have special exercises and so on for the most part. When I've tried to teach people exercises, the results haven't been that exciting. For reading the Akashic records, which is an area that people are often less skilled at, or that they say there are very few, masters of of Akashic record reading, which is the record of everything that has happened and most of what will happen, and actually everything that's going on right now. Which you can tap into and see anything you want to see. They say that there aren't not many people who are masters of that. I don't know if that's true. It's very, very easy for me to do it. But when I did learn some exercises to develop it, because again, I just started doing it spontaneously myself, I didn't get the best results. But when I just had small groups in a class, which I also teach by phone at the moment, I'm not really a big visual person, like everyone's doing podcasts and webinars. For this kind of work, there's no need. In fact, I think it's a detriment, if anything, because some of your attention is going on what people look like, the colors in the room, the pictures on the wall, where this is only about information and going inside and receiving information. And so I've always found that just the voice was perfect, and I used to do a lot of radio shows, quite big radio shows, and I felt it was an absolutely perfect medium for doing this psychic work and doing past life readings and healings and so on, where people are just focused on, it all comes through in the voice. It all comes through in the voice. If I read you last 6 months ago, when I pick up the phone and hear your voice, I can tell exactly how much stuff you've cleared, how much lighter you are than you were 6 months ago. It's in your voice. And again, a lot of healing comes through the voice. It's called toning. So when you are reading somebody and you talk about an issue or maybe their child or something, whatever needs healing will get the healing. It comes through your voice. It brings spirit to the person or the issue, and they can work on that, and they will work on that for several days after the event normally. So at the moment, the focus here is very much on the voice and the voice work. Now, there was one exercise I did, which is you sit in front of a window. If you have a road outside your house, and you just have to guess which color car is going to drive past next. So it's a silly little exercise. Well, I just did it to see how much I got it right. I don't really feel, maybe those exercises do develop that ability, but my experience is people who really want to develop the ability usually have the ability already there, and it's a way of tapping into it is what they need. And that's where I find that actually when you have to provide something for someone who needs it, it's very much easier. So in my classes, people read each other's real life day-to-day problems. It's a phone class, so it's anonymous. That's just first names. If they want to hook up later, that's fine with me, but they don't basically know each other. They live all over the country, and sometimes in other countries too. But reading real life problems it pulls information out of you. Now, some people want to do this, and it's very hard for them. And what I've noticed with people that have been in my trainings and so on, that want to do, say, psychic work, and they can't, or they get very little, if anything. They've usually been persecuted very heavily in a previous life, or they have had a program put in which is called an implant, and they may be actually terribly gifted at this area. And so someone who is jealous, some dark, powerful being, has actually inserted a program into their etheric body that blocks them from accessing a very powerful ability. So you do also find that in this field of spiritual development, that sometimes the most gifted people cannot access their ability, and they actually have to have some help with the removal of a program. And there is fear of stepping forward. Now, when I first started 33 years ago doing readings full time, quite a lot of people who came to me were told, you should be doing this kind of work. You have the ability. And I would get a lot of people who it really pressed their buttons and they really went into major fear. I don't find that very much now. And when it does happen, it's on a smaller scale. That was 33 years ago. We were all younger. We were less far ahead on the path. The world was less far ahead on the path. Now, there are people who have blocks to doing light work, but I don't find that those blocks are, they're more easy to isolate and to deal with. Let's see if I can get anything else about. Okay, well, what Spirit is saying is if you're trying to open your third eye and develop seeing ability, lying in a darkened room, with the curtains drawn or the drapes drawn or whatever, lying comfortably on your back on a bed perhaps, and letting your mind wander, and perhaps you could try to get you could look for information about somebody or would like to help, or maybe somebody you suspect is not having the best of intentions for you and you want to know more, and you just bring them into your mind's eye and just relax, and you may get impressions appear around that person. If you get any impressions, don't ignore them. You could see other people, you could see events, you may see lights and colors, you may see a darkness in their aura. These are all things to be noticed, taken note of, and not ignored. Most of the time there will be something solid behind it. Occasionally a person can be interfered with maybe a being that doesn't want them to develop spiritually, psychically. But most, so we all get some false impressions. My least favorite area is channeling those that have died. I do it. Sometimes it's absolutely appropriate and it's a very, very helpful communication. But sometimes, maybe with a client where there hasn't been such a powerful connection with them, I would have someone come in, but when I describe them, the person goes, oh no, that's not them. It has happened, but that's my least favorite thing. Usually it works out well, but I'm not really, these people who have passed, they're on the astral plane, and I really want to help the family. I really want to help the person they've left behind. I want to have the person who's crossed over to have the satisfaction of really it's like a kind of hugging with their loved person, so I want to facilitate that. And very often, it's really, really positive and really, really helpful. But sometimes I get a trickster, because there can be all kind of earthbound people out there on the astral and the lower astral, and it's like, oh, here's a medium, they can tell you've got a bit more light or something, and they plonk themselves down in front of you, and they're not the person you were looking for. It has happened. More of what I would do would be reading people's Akashic records, going into past lives and seeing where they've still got soul fragments stuck, releasing them. You can also call it stuck energy if you like. That is also stuck energy that they're carrying around with them that's blocking some of their good fortune and progress. So that is kind of a major thing I do. I like it because people's lives change a lot. However, maybe these days with the money thing that's going on and so on, a large part of the work is, just life reading. What's going on? Are you going to get this job? Is your child okay? Are you going to move into this house you like, or should you move house? What's going to happen in the near future, medium future, long distant future, and maybe family members and so on, relationships, and animal communication, which, I happen to speak close to my heart, and medical, because prior to this I was a naturopath and I do medical readings too. So that's where the bulk of my readings go, medical, nutritional, telepathing, what's this person thinking, which is okay, if they've got an agenda and it's not helpful to my client, which is mainly why they ask, then it's perfectly okay for me to go in and say what they're thinking. I don't invade anyone's privacy unless there's a good reason. So that kind of thing, and as I say, I started doing this so long ago, I knew I had ability. It just happened that I got a little store in an antiques market, and it was very cheap. And it was time for me to, I thought, well, I have to be stupid not to make this money back every month. And it was time for me to move out of working with the physical body. I literally sent all my clients off to have hypnotherapy and rebirthing. And I just sat there and thought, what am I going to do now? And I had this tiny little store. And I just thought, well, I always said I'd learn palmistry. So I read about 4 books on palmistry. And I did have 4 lessons from a witch. That's the only lessons I've had. And she was good at palmistry. But when you get someone in front of you and they've given you their money and they're hoping you'll, sort out their life to a degree, and you look at their hand, it's like no hand in any book, in any diagram. And I would just go, because I know nothing. I didn't even know I was bringing information from a higher dimension and guides. And I would just have this freak out, brain freak out. And then the information would just start pouring through. And I was like, well, how do I know this? But it started with the hand. And then eventually I realized I didn't need the hand. But palmistry is a wonderful, it's a wonderful discipline. It's a wonderful thing to learn. It's fascinating because the hand is an extension of the brain, has more nerve endings in it than any other part of the body. Every part of the brain is connected to a different part of the hand, and each has its marks on it. And it tells you so much that it's really worthwhile. And another thing is, if you want to develop as a seer, healer, reader, I would advise picking a discipline and learning it. Now, for probably most people who want to do readings, starting with a tarot deck is the easiest way in. And a lot of people like it. And if you're going to have a tarot deck, I would say start with the Rider-Waite deck. It's beautiful and clear. I love the pictures. Cards don't really work very well for me, and I don't really need to use them, but I do adore the pictures on the Rider-Waite tarot deck, and there are other beautiful decks too available. There are many, but they come with an instruction book, so it's a jolly good crutch to lean on, because you can do a reading for yourself, then you can do readings for your nearest and dearest, and then you can do some readings for your friends. And every time you don't really know what something means, you can look it up. Hopefully, in the course of doing all that, you will realize that you're getting intuitions and feelings. There, in many ways, if you do massages, you will start to get information for the person that you're working on come through. You will get thoughts about them. You will be channeling from their guides. Spirit is looking for an opportunity to speak to your client or your person who's receiving your massage or your healing. And so if you're at all open and you dare to voice it, that's another way in to doing channeling and reading. Another thing, somebody said, well, you can't just do palms. Another reader, who was a good reader, said, you can't just do palms. He said, get something else. People like to see something. So then I asked my friends who also had started channeling, and Spirit came through and said, we see you with a crystal ball. So I saw, they said, we know you will recognize the right one when you see it. And I did. I saw a beautiful one in a store, and it had mirroring on the outside, but it went through all the colors of the rainbow, and it was thick at the top. And then at the bottom, it thinned out more and more, so you could actually see into the glass ball at the bottom of the glass ball. And I practiced with that for a week, 10 minutes a day. And it got so powerful that I had to stop. But it was very interesting. And for some people, that might be a really good way. It's called scrying. And you can do it with a mirror. You can do it with a bowl of water in certain lights, seeing things on the surface of the water. What happened with my crystal ball, and I did use it, I take it to psychic fairs and things and use it with people. And it was, at a certain point, it definitely told me some really important things. But what happened was, everything on the surface of the ball started to shift. It wasn't a ball you look into. And I would start to have visions, and I would see people, and then in the end, I was seeing so many people, and they were real people. I mean, they were like Indian chiefs and past lives of my friends and God knows what, everything. It would just like flash on all these hundreds of faces. And then, after a few days, I had always this crystal ball in my hands. I'd be kind of reclining on the bed or something, sitting there, I don't know, propped against cushions. The ball disappeared, and there was a woman standing in my hands, and she was about 4 inches high. But she was a real woman. It was nothing of the video or the vision about it. There was a woman standing in my hands. And at that point, my heart just went pow. My astral body shot back into my body. And I just thought, I'm not going to practice with this anymore. It's just too intense, because it blew out all the dimensions. I wasn't in the same world. I was somewhere else. And, I've already experimented with that. I don't find it a terribly comfortable feeling. It's very interesting, to shoot into other dimensions. It's very interesting. But it's a little stressful in the nervous system. I've done all that. I don't need to do that. I mean, it's very fun. It's very entertaining, but it burns up a lot of nervous energy. But I did use it in readings with the public for a while, for quite a few years actually. And it just, it told me some really important information about people. So I would advise getting a modality and learning enough about it that you can work with people, whether it's hands-on spiritual healing. There's a lot of information on the internet. There are excellent books out there. If you're doing palmistry, Cairo is the one to use for time. The way he marks out the hand for your different stages of life and the ages is the correct one, but it's not the one that everyone else uses. But, well, anyway, for me personally, Cairo's timing system on the hand was perfect. I don't like that he would predict the day of people's death and they would always die on that day, because some of them were so scared they would have died on that day. And I don't believe in doing that. But aside from that, he was a very good palmist. You know, but, you know, he may have been a bit insensitive in that way. He predicted the day Edward VII would die, and the king believed him, and he died on that day. He lived his life in fear. So predicting people's death is, you know, it's not something that good readers go there. Anyway, I hope that you've got something out of this. And if you have questions, you're welcome to post them in the comments. And I beg you to subscribe to my channel, because I do want to start to get visible, and it does mean that my videos will come up on your newsfeed on YouTube. And as I say, you can ask anything. You can also get a shorter reading for free. That way, you know, if you want a reading on some things in your life, or you have a question about your life, I can address that. If you want a more detailed reading, you can contact me and have a private reading. But thanks so much for listening, and I do hope you come here again. So enjoy the rest of your day. God bless.